Spring 1857, Baltimore Harbor, just before dawn. The lid closes. Total darkness. Lear Green feels the weight of the ropes being pulled tight around the sailor's chest. She hears the knots being tied. The wood presses against her shoulders, her knees, her back. There is no room to shift, no room to stretch, barely room to breathe. She is 18 years old, and she has just sealed herself inside a wooden box. Above her, dock workers are loading cargo onto an Ericsson line steamer bound for Philadelphia. She hears their boots on the deck, hears crates being stacked, feels her chest being lifted, tilted, dropped onto the pile. Something heavy lands beside her. The wood groans. Somewhere in Baltimore, her enslaver James Noble is asleep. He has posted a $150 reward for her capture. He has described her in the newspapers. He has men watching the roads, the trains, the passenger decks of every ship leaving the harbor. He is certain she cannot escape. He never thought to check the cargo. Inside the chest, Lear has a quilt, a pillow, a small amount of food, a bottle of water, and 18 hours of darkness ahead of her. 18 hours where she cannot move, cannot call out, cannot signal for help. If dock workers inspect the cargo, she dies. If the chest is crushed beneath heavier freight, she dies. If she panics, cries out, makes any sound at all, she dies. But if she endures this, she will step off that ship in Philadelphia a free woman. She will marry the man she loves. She will never bear children into bondage. The steamer's engine rumbles to life. The ship begins to move. 18 hours, one wooden box, everything she has ever wanted on the other side. To understand what Lear Green is about to endure, you need to understand what she was running from. And you need to understand why the man who claimed to own her believed she would never escape. Lear Green was born around 1,839 inches Baltimore, Maryland. She never knew freedom. As a child, she belonged to a woman named Rachel Howard. When Howard died, Lear was passed down like furniture to Howard's son-in-law, a butter dealer named James Noble. She was not asked, she was not consulted, she was inherited. Noble's wife made Lear's life a particular kind of misery. William Still, the Underground Railroad conductor who would later record Lear's story, wrote that the young mistress was exceedingly demanding and oppressive in the tasks she placed upon Lear's shoulders. There was no kindness in that house, no allowance for rest, no disposition whatever to grant Lear any liberties. She worked, she obeyed, she endured. And then she met William Adams. Adams was a free black man who worked as a barber in Baltimore. He fell in love with Lear and asked her to marry him. She refused. Not because she did not love him. She refused because she could not stomach the thought of bringing children into the world who would be born into bondage. Any child she carried would belong to James Noble, could be sold away from her at any moment, could be worked, beaten, inherited like she had been. She told William Adams she would never marry him while she remained in chains. He proposed again and again. And finally Lear accepted on one condition. She would marry him as a free woman, or not at all. But how could she possibly escape? Baltimore in 1857 was a city designed to make freedom impossible for people like Lear Green. The Fugitive Act of 1850 had transformed the entire country into a hunting ground. Even if an enslaved person reached a free state, they could be captured and dragged back. Professional catchers roamed the roads with dogs and guns. They earned bounties for every black body they returned. James Noble knew the system. He trusted the system. When Lear disappeared, he immediately posted an advertisement in the Sun newspaper. $150 reward. He described her precisely. Black complexion, round-featured, good-looking, ordinary size. He listed exactly what she had been wearing when she vanished. A tan-coloured silk bonnet, a dark plaid silk dress, a light muslin delaine, a watered silk cape. He even knew who had helped her. He wrote that he was confident she had been persuaded by a Negro man named William Adams, who had been heard saying he intended to marry her. Noble watched the roads. His allies watched the trains. Authorities inspected passengers on every steamship leaving the harbour. Free black travellers needed papers proving their status. Those papers were examined, scrutinized, questioned. The system was airtight. The net was complete. What Noble never considered was that Lear Green would not travel as a passenger at all. He watched every human being leaving Baltimore. He never thought to watch the cargo. That morning, as the Ericsson steamer prepared to depart for Philadelphia, the dock workers loaded freight onto the deck, crates of goods, boxes of merchandise, and one old sailor's chest, fastened tight with heavy rope, containing a young woman who had decided that 18 hours of darkness was a price worth paying for a lifetime of light. James Noble would wake up to find his property gone, his reward worthless, his surveillance defeated by a wooden box and the courage of a woman he had underestimated every single day of her life. The steamer pulls away from Baltimore Harbor. Inside the chest, Lear Green feels every movement. The pitch of the deck, the vibration of the engine, the sway of the water beneath her. She cannot see anything. The darkness is absolute. Her world has shrunk to the dimensions of a sailor's chest. Wood against her back, wood against her knees, wood inches from her face. The space between her body and the lid is measured in fingers, not feet. The first hour passes. Her muscles begin to cramp. There is no position that offers relief. She cannot straighten her legs, cannot roll onto her side, cannot lift her arms above her chest. The quilt beneath her provides thin cushion against the hard wooden bottom. The pillow supports her head at an angle that will ache for days afterward. She does not move, does not shift, does not make a sound. Above her, dock workers move across the deck. She hears their voices, hears cargo being rearranged. At one point, something heavy is dropped onto the crate beside her. The impact shakes through the wood. She holds her breath, waits. The footsteps move away. 2 hours, 3 hours. The chest grows warm, the air grows thin. Lear had been told that Mrs. Adams, William's mother, would travel as a passenger on the same steamer. She would find a way to reach the cargo hold during the night and open the lid just enough to let fresh air inside. But the night is hours away, and the air is running out now. Lear focuses on breathing slowly. Shallow breaths, measured breaths. She cannot afford to panic. Panic uses oxygen. Panic makes noise. Panic kills. 4 hours, 5 hours. Her throat is dry. She has a bottle of water somewhere near her hand, but reaching for it means moving. Moving means sound. She stays still, stays silent, endures. The steamer stops. Lear's heart freezes. Voices above. The ship has docked somewhere along the route. She hears new cargo being loaded. Hears workers shouting instructions. Hears footsteps approaching the pile where her chest sits buried among the freight. Someone is checking the cargo. She hears a crate being opened nearby. Hears hands rummaging through contents. Hears the lid being closed again. The footsteps come closer, closer. She can hear breathing now. Someone is standing directly above her chest. Lear does not move, does not breathe. Her lungs burn. Her heart pounds so loud she is certain they can hear it through the wood. The footsteps move on. The inspection passes her by. Hours later, darkness falls over the steamer. The passengers retire to their quarters. The deck grows quiet. And somewhere in the silent watches of the night, Lear hears soft footsteps approaching. Hears the ropes being untied. Feels the lid lift just slightly. Fresh air floods the chest. Lear gasps, takes one breath, 2. Mrs. Adams whispers something she cannot quite hear. Then the lid closes again. The ropes are retied, and Lear is alone in the darkness once more. But now she knows she can survive this. She has made it through half the journey. Philadelphia is hours away. Freedom is hours away. She lies in that wooden box as the steamer pushes north through the night. Her body screams for movement. Her mind begs for light. Everything in her wants to cry out, to pound on the lid, to end this torture. She does not. She endures. She refuses to break. William Still would later write that the ordeal required as much courage as cutting off one's own arm. Lear Green did not flinch. She did not waver. She had promised herself she would walk off that ship a free woman, and she intended to keep that promise. 18 hours. That is how long Lear Green remained inside that chest. 18 hours without standing, without stretching, without seeing light. 18 hours with her knees pressed to her chest and her face inches from the wooden lid. Most people cannot sit in a cramped position for 30 minutes without shifting, cannot endure an hour in a tight space without feeling the walls closing in. The human mind rebels against confinement. Every instinct screams to move, to escape, to break free. Lear Green silenced those instincts for 18 hours. Think about what that required. Not just physical endurance, though that alone would break most people. Think about the mental discipline, the control over her own fear. Every cramp in her legs, every ache in her back, every moment of suffocating darkness demanded that she surrender, pound on the lid, cry out, end this unbearable torment. She refused. When William Still untied the ropes and opened that chest in Philadelphia, he expected to find a woman shattered by the ordeal, traumatized, barely able to speak. He had seen other freedom seekers arrive by similar methods. One pregnant woman who escaped in a box arrived so close to death she could not move the straw covering her body, could not speak, could barely breathe. She spent days recovering before she could form words. Lear Green was different. She rose from that chest and stepped onto free soil. And when Still asked her about the journey, about the terror of those 18 hours in darkness, about the moments when death seemed certain, Lear Green gave an answer that still echoes through history. She declared that she had no fear, after 18 hours sealed in a wooden box, after feeling the ship rock and the cargo shift around her, after hearing footsteps approach during the inspection and wondering if the next second would bring discovery and death. After lying in absolute darkness with nothing but her own heartbeat for company. She had no fear. This was not bravado. This was not a lie told to impress. William Still recorded thousands of testimonies from freedom seekers during his years with the Underground Railroad. He knew the difference between courage performed and courage lived. When he wrote about Lear Green, he placed her among the heroic women of the 19th century. He compared her ordeal to cutting off one's own arm. He marveled at the strength required to endure what she endured, and he recorded her words exactly as she spoke them. She had no fear. How does a person reach that place? How does an 18-year-old woman find within herself the steel to attempt something so dangerous, so painful, so seemingly impossible? The answer is simpler than it appears. Lear Green had already survived worse. She had survived being inherited like property, survived a mistress who showed no mercy, survived watching other human beings sold away from their families, survived knowing that any child she bore would face the same fate. 18 hours in a box was nothing compared to a lifetime in chains. When Lear Green climbed into that sailor's chest in Baltimore Harbor, she was not running away from something. She was running towards something, toward William Adams, toward marriage as a free woman, toward children who would never know the weight of bondage. She sealed herself in darkness because she could finally see the light. And when she emerged in Philadelphia, she proved that the human spirit cannot be contained. Not by laws, not by chains, not by wooden walls. She had no fear, because she had already decided that freedom was worth any price. The Ericsson steamer arrived at the Philadelphia wharf after 18 hours at sea. Dock workers began unloading cargo, crates were lifted, boxes were stacked, and somewhere in that pile of freight sat a sailor's chest that no one thought to question. The chest was delivered first to a house on Barley Street, home to friends of Mrs. Adams. From there it was transported to the residence of William Still, chairman of the Vigilance Committee of the Pennsylvania Anti-Slavery Society. Still had helped hundreds of freedom seekers reach safety. He had seen people arrive by every method imaginable. But even he understood that what he was about to witness was extraordinary. He untied the heavy ropes. He lifted the lid. And Lear Green rose from that chest, stepped onto the floor, and stood on free soil for the first time in her life. She was alive. She was unbroken. She was free. The journey from Baltimore to Philadelphia covered roughly 100 miles. 100 miles that James Noble's surveillance network was designed to make impossible. 100 miles of watched roads, inspected trains, and monitored passenger decks. 100 miles that should have been impossible for an 18-year-old black woman to cross. Lear Green crossed them as cargo, and no one suspected a thing. Back in Baltimore, James Noble discovered that his property had vanished. His carefully worded advertisement had produced nothing. His $150 reward had attracted no useful information. His detailed descriptions of what Lear had been wearing, where she might be headed, who might have helped her, had all proven worthless. He had watched every escape route. He had trusted a system designed over generations to keep people like Lear Green in chains. And that system had failed him completely. The butter dealer who believed he owned a human being woke up to find that human being had outsmarted him, had outplanned him, had endured something he could never have endured himself. And there was nothing he could do about it. Philadelphia was a free city. The moment Lear stepped off that steamer, she stepped beyond his reach. The Fugitive Act still technically allowed enslavers to pursue their property into free states. But first, they had to find that property. And Lear Green was already moving north, already disappearing into the network of safe houses and secret routes that made up the Underground Railroad. Within days, she arrived in Elmira, New York. William Adams was waiting for her. The man who had proposed to her again and again. The man who had refused to give up on her. The man whose mother had risked her own freedom to escort that chest through 18 hours of danger. Lear Green married William Adams as a free woman, just as she had promised, just as she had demanded. She would not bring children into bondage. She would not build a family in chains. She had made that vow, and she had kept it at a cost that most people could never pay. William Still made sure her story would survive. He photographed her emerging from that sailor's chest. He recorded her testimony in the careful notes he kept on every freedom seeker who passed through his care. Years later, he would publish those notes in his book, The Underground Railroad. And Lear Green's face, rising from that wooden box, would become one of the most powerful images in the history of American resistance. James Noble had believed she was incapable of such a thing. He had believed she was property. He had believed she would never escape. He was wrong about all of it. William Still was not a man easily impressed. As chairman of the Vigilance Committee of the Pennsylvania Anti-Slavery Society, he had spent years helping freedom seekers reach safety. He had heard hundreds of testimonies. He had witnessed escapes by land and sea, by disguise and deception, by courage that defied comprehension. He had seen humanity at its most desperate and its most determined. When he wrote about Lear Green, he placed her in rare company. He called her one of the heroic women of the 19th century. Still understood what Lear had accomplished. He understood the physical toll of 18 hours confined in a space barely large enough to hold a human body. He understood the psychological weight of absolute darkness, of silence, of isolation. He compared her ordeal to the amputation of a limb, the kind of suffering that most people cannot even imagine, let alone endure. And he understood what it meant that she emerged from that chest and declared she had no fear. Still made certain that Lear Green's story would not disappear. He did something remarkable for that era. He photographed her. At the Anti-Slavery Society office in Philadelphia, he arranged for Lear to be captured on film in the very moment of her emergence from the sailor's chest. The image showed her rising from the wooden box, stepping into freedom, leaving the darkness behind. That photograph became the basis for an engraving that would appear in Still's monumental work, The Underground Railroad, published in 1872. The book documented hundreds of escapes, but Lear Green's image stood among the most striking. A young woman climbing out of a box. A visual testament to what human beings will endure for liberty. Still recorded every detail, the contents of the chest, the quilt and pillow. the small amount of food and water, the heavy ropes that bound the lid, the 18 hours of darkness, the role of Mrs. Adams in providing those precious moments of fresh air during the night watches. He wanted history to remember not just that Lear escaped, but how she escaped. The planning, the courage, the sacrifice of everyone involved. He also recorded the fugitive advertisement that James Noble had placed in the Sun, the $150 reward, the detailed physical description, the accusation against William Adams, still preserved Noble's words so that future generations could see exactly what Lear was running from. The arrogance, the assumption of ownership, the belief that a human being could be property. And then still preserved Lear's response. Her declaration that she had no fear, her refusal to be broken by an ordeal that would have shattered most people, her emergence from that chest not as a victim, but as a victor. The recognition Lear Green received was not medals or ceremonies. It was something more lasting. It was documentation. It was preservation. It was the insistence that her story mattered, that her courage deserved to be remembered, that future generations needed to know what she had done. William Still gave Lear Green something that enslavers tried to deny every person they claimed to own. He gave her a place in history, a name that would survive, a face that would endure. James Noble had written about Lear as his Negro girl, his property, his possession. William Still wrote about her as a hero, and history has proven which description was true. The photograph, the engraving, the testimony, the book. All of it exists because one man recognized what Lear Green had accomplished and refused to let it be forgotten. Lear Green married William Adams in Elmira, New York. She stood beside the man who had proposed to her again and again, the man who had refused to accept that bondage would keep them apart. She spoke her vows as a free woman, just as she had demanded, just as she had earned. They chose to remain in Elmira rather than continue north to Canada. Many freedom seekers pushed on across the border where the Fugitive Act could not reach them. Lear and William decided that New York was far enough. They had risked everything for this life. They intended to live it. For 3 years, Lear Green experienced what she had been denied for the first 18 years of her existence: freedom, marriage. The simple dignity of waking each morning and choosing how to spend her day. No mistress assigning impossible tasks, no threat of being sold, no fear that her children would be born into chains. She died in 1860 at the age of 21. The cause is not recorded. History does not tell us whether it was illness, accident, or something else entirely. What history tells us is that Lear Green lived her final years as a free woman. She died having kept the promise she made to herself in that Baltimore kitchen. She would not bring children into bondage. She would marry as a free person, or not at all. She did both, and no one can take that from her. William Adams disappears from the historical record after Lear's death. We do not know where he went or how he spent his remaining years, but we know that he loved a woman enough to help her seal herself in a wooden box. We know that his mother risked her own freedom to escort that box through 18 hours of danger. We know that when Lear emerged in Philadelphia, William was waiting for her in Elmira, ready to build the life they had dreamed of together. The sailor's chest that carried Lear Green to freedom still exists. It sits today in the Independence Seaport Museum in Philadelphia, part of a permanent exhibit called Tides of Freedom, African Presence on the Delaware River. Professor Tukufu Zuberi, who curated the exhibit, wanted visitors to understand what that chest represented, not just wood and rope and iron hinges, but courage, sacrifice, the willingness to risk everything for the chance to be free. Zuberi spoke about Lear Green and others like her. He said that the freedoms we enjoy today were won by individuals who were willing to sacrifice all to give a model for us as to what freedom is about. Lear Green did not know that her story would be told more than a century and a half after her death. She did not know that her photograph would survive, that her chest would be preserved, that her name would be remembered when the name of her enslaver had faded into irrelevance. She only knew that she could not live in chains, and she acted on that knowledge with a courage that still defies comprehension. 18 hours in a wooden box, 18 hours of darkness and silence and suffocating fear. And when she emerged, she declared that she had no fear. That is the legacy of Lear Green, not the suffering, not the oppression, not the cruelty of the system that tried to crush her. The legacy is the refusal, the resistance, the absolute determination to be free. She was 18 years old when she climbed into that chest. She was 21 when she died. 3 years of freedom. Some might call that a tragedy. But Lear Green would call it victory, because she lived those 3 years on her own terms. And she proved that no box, no chain, no law could contain a spirit that had already decided to be free.